Okay. Double whammy. The stars are aligned. We're going to take a break again?
Well, I hope you donated a lot of money.
4 shillings and 6pence halfpenny. 4 shillings and 6pence halfpenny.
Okay.
Or 6pence 3 farthing to be even more accurate.
Right.
I worked in English for additional language, and he was a schedule, but we kind of went on the road, and this is where the tables dropped.
Like I didn't necessarily.
Take a break after Tisha
What?
I think I'll take a break after Tisha.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure when the last year is.
I think you should read it. You go to appeal with it, but anyway.
I'm sure I erased it.
Right.
I think I would catch a little bit here. Yeah.
No, nothing to return. Right. I was wondering whether you happen to have a set of
She did.
right. Hamex Davar of the Netziv. Right. Of
I know necessarily in that
right. I'd like to borrow for a while. Right, good morning everybody.
Good morning, sir.
Okay, so this is Emitz Hashem. Next year we're going to carry on. We're going to learn Rashi on Gemara. What was Rashi's? How did Rashi deal with Gemara? But today we're going to deal with Rashi on Tanach, on the Nach. Okay, Rashi on the Nach. Now, the scope or the library which Rashi had on Nevi'im and Ksuvim was far less than he had on the Torah. Okay, he didn't have, they weren't printed yet, the Midrashim which we have nowadays on Nach, like Yalkut Shimoni. Yalkut Shimoni was only printed many years later. So therefore, Rashi's had to deal with it a lot by himself. And Obviously nowadays, unfortunately, we don't learn Rashi so much on Navi. Okay, we have Dat Mikra, we have now we have what's it called, Rav Steinsaltz, etc., etc. Okay, but we're talking about the first one who did it, basically. So what we're going to do is we're going to take examples of Rashi on Nevi'im, and we're going to see how he analyzes things. So let's start off Sefer Yoshua. So Sefer Yoshua begins, Vayihi acharei mot Moshe Eved Hashem. Vayomer Hashem el Yoshua bin Nun mesharet Moshe le'mo. Now, the question which Rashi had here was the Vav, and. Vayehi, and. What does it mean, and? And these what happened after Moshe Rabbeinu passed away. As if the Vav is a Vav HaChibur, a Vav which connects up the Torah to Sefer Yoshua. Okay, every time you have the Vav at the beginning, it means to say there is a connection. So Rashi has to deal with this connection. And Rashi comes along and says the following. Mechubar al Seder HaTorah. It is joined to the order of the Torah. Hamasayemet b'ktirat Moshe, which finishes off with the passing away of Moshe. V'zeh mechubar la. And this is joined to it. Now, let's give ourselves an example. Okay? Many times you don't have the Vav. Why is there a connection between the Torah and Sefer Yoshua? And Chazal come along and tell us in Masechet Nedarim, they say that, Shmulik, there's a pages there. They come and tell us that were it not for Am Yisrael who sinned, we only needed Sefer Torah and Sefer Yoshua. Why is Sefer Yoshua so important? Because in actual fact it's the sixth book of the Torah. Why is it the sixth book of the Torah? Because without Sefer Yoshua we wouldn't know where the Nachalot were. And since the whole concept of what we're going to learn in Parshat Pinchas is the division of the land where Moshe Rabbeinu portrays it, he doesn't know all these places in Eretz Israel. Anybody who's doing 929 now knows that we're learning the 16th perek of Sefer Yoshua. 14th, 15th, 16th perek of Sefer Yoshua speaks about the division of the land according to the Shevet, each city, what they captured, etc., etc. Now Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't go into so detail. Why? Because he never lived there. And if he didn't live there, how does he know where it is? So therefore the map of Eretz Israel and the concept of the division of the land only takes place in Sefer Yoshua. And without Sefer Yoshua, we wouldn't know where they were. But the Meshech Chochmah in Sefer Shemot, is an introduction to Sefer Shemot, gives us an even greater detail. And he says the following. V'nei Yoshua, matzanu she'amar lo Hashem yitbarach. HaKadosh Baruch Hu speaks to him directly. There are only two people who HaKadosh Baruch Hu speaks to directly. Moshe Rabbeinu and Yoshua bin Nun. It's written, Vayidaber Hashem el Yoshua, Vayomer Hashem el Yoshua. Similar to Moshe Rabbeinu. And we see, Matzanu Shamalo Hashem, Shuv Mulet B'nei Yisrael Sheinit. In Perek Gimel, Perek Dalet of Sefer Yoshua, Perek Hey, it speaks about the mitzvah of Bris Milah to Yoshua at the time of Gilgal. And there we learn a special halacha, which is called Priya. We're not going to go into it now. And we know that it's written, it's a halacha l'Moshe Misinai. We have to do it. And say Chazal, and v'chein matzanu in line number 14, shamru b'masechet makot, vayichtov Yoshua et advarim ha'ele b'sefer Torat Elokim. Yoshua writes things. Ele shmona psukim sheb'mishneh Torah. Uparshat, and also the story of Ir Miklat ne'emra al yado. V'lachen amar vayedaber mipnei shaya Torah. It is in actual fact the sixth book of the Torah, Sefer Yoshua. And therefore, the Meshech Chochmah comes and says, B'chivan שליהושע נסתלק גם כן בחירה. In certain aspects, his free choice was taken away from him because he comes similar to Moshe. לכן משה ויהושע היו ביכולתם לצוות להעמיד חמה. Yoshua says, שמש בגבעון דום וירח בעמק איילון. He stops nature. He changes the format of nature. And Moshe and Yoshua are very, very similar. And that is why you have the Vav HaChibur between the Torah and Sefer Yoshua. Let's go next stage. Yes.
Even without the Vav or without the Vayehi, the fact he talks about Acharei Moshe, you would
but
the Hemshech.
No. You're beginning something new. Now begins a new book. Moshe Rabbeinu has died. Now it's the new book. No. That's the Chidush of Rashi. If he would have written Acharei Mot Eved Hashem, then Yoshua is something new. Moshe Rabbeinu is finished. No. This Vayehi is joining together. Let's go one more stage.
Does the same apply with the Parashat Acharei Mot?
Vayehi Acharei Mot, exactly. It's always this continuation. Let's go one stage further. Also in Shoftim it's written, Vayehi Acharei Mot Yoshua, after the death of Yoshua. And then, again, the beginning of Sefer Shmuel, Vayehi. Vayehi ish echad min haramatayim tzofim me'ar Ephraim. So we have 3 books, all beginning with the word Vayehi. Yoshua, Shoftim, Shmuel. And here again, Rashi has this problem. Why does he have this problem? And here we see Rashi's fascinating insight. He says the following. Hakol lefi haseder. Everything is according to the order. Moshe masar et haTorah liYoshua. ויהושע לזקנים, ושופט מסר לשופט, עד שהגיע לאלי, וממנו לשמואל, כמו ששנינו וזקנים לנביאים. Right. Now, what is this telling us? So let's go back to the Mishnah, which we all know when we were taught, when we were 5 years old. Moshe kibel Torah misinai, Msora liYoshua. Says Rashi, says the Baal Tanura, Lazkenim, She'erichu yamim achrei Yoshua, line number 35. V'otam azkenim lizkenim acherim ad she'higiu, and these elders go to the elders, ad she'higiu letchilatam shel neviim, she'em Eli HaKohen u'Shmuel haramati. And we have the Meiri, which we're not going to go into the moment. Let's leave the Meiri. So what is this telling us, guys? Who wrote the first psukim of these books? Who were the editors of these books? Vayehi acharei mot Eved Hashem, Vayehi acharei mot Yoshua, Vayehi ish echad min haramatayim. Pardon? Right, you say Anshe Knesset Hagdorah, you're saying Shmuel. Now, who gives the final signature to these books? Ezra Sofer. That means to say, they understand this concept of continuation. They're the ones who actually give the final touches. Does it mean that Shmuel wrote these books word for word? Or is there an editor? Who says these words by he? Now, according to Rashi, it would appear that this becomes the basis. The words, what happens here? What is the cause and which is the effect? Do Anshe Knesset Hagdolah create Vayehi Acharei? Do they know Moshe kibel Torah misinai Msora liYoshua Yoshua zkenim? Did they learn it from the word Vayehi, or was it the opposite way round? Does everybody understand what I mean? What created this concept of Vayihi? Is it their knowledge? Like the Meiri will come and tell us, and says the following: V'nimtza mikol makom shezkinim eile in Pirkei Avot. I've turned over the page. Lo otam shivim zkenim, elo hayu zkenim acherim, shayu rodim et ha'am b'yimei Yoshua u'v'mitzvato. That means these were the zkenim in the time of Yoshua. Shneimar vayesof Yoshua et kol shivtei Yisrael, vayikra leziknei Yisrael, v'chein vayavod Yisrael kol yimei Yoshua v'chol yimei hazkenim, etc., etc. V'achrei Yoshua bet, after he passes away, Masra lotam zkenim, v'otniel ben Kenaz hayu mirishonehem, ve'Eli Kohen me'achronehem, etc., etc. So this continuous flow of sources of tradition takes place at this period. Moshe kibel Torah miSinai, Nasara Yeshua, Yeshua zkenim laneviim. Now, was this their Masorah, their tradition? And they, because this was their tradition, they were forced to write at the beginning of every pasuk, Vayehi. Okay? Or does Yoshua write, Vayehi acharei mot Yoshua ben Nun? And does Shmuel write, Vayehi acharei Vayehi acharei mot Yoshua? Who writes it? It's a big question. Do Anshe Knesset Agdolah write it as the final edition, or do the authors themselves do it? But there's something quite amazing in this question. Because what we're going to do is, we're going to learn an unbelievable note of Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky. Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky was the Rosh Hashiva of Torah Vadas. Lived at the same time as Rav Moshe Feinstein. He was an unbelievable expert in Nach. Unbelievable insights in Nevi'im and Ksuvim. Really, you read his things, you come out of there dazzled. And an amazing insight into history. And what he writes the following in his Perush on his notes on Pirkei Avos. And he writes the following: why does Rashi write what he writes in line number 30? Let's go over line number 30 again. Vayi ish echad min haramatayim. Rashi says in line number 30, Hakol lefi haseder. Moshe masar Torah Yoshua, Shoelu Eskenim, Shofet masar lo Shofet. Says Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky in line number 49. וכנראה כוונת רש"י בזה הוא להסביר מדוע חילק שמואל הנביא את ספר שופטים שהוא כתבו מספר שמואל ועשה ספר מיוחד. Why does Shmuel need to write two different books? One called Sefer Shoftim and the other one called Shmuel Aleph. Why does he need to do it? Why does he need to create two separate books? Now,
does everybody agree that?
1 minute. Pardon? Yes, yeah. Says Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, ועל זה תירץ דהקבלה הייתה ממשה ליהושע, מישוע לזקנים, זקנים לנביאים, ולפי חד ייחד לכל אחד ספר. And therefore, each book relates to a certain period, leader. ספר יהושע לתקופת יהושע, ספר שופטים לתקופת הזקנים, ואחר כך ספר שמואל לתקופת קבלת הנביאים. Shmuel realizes that in his lifetime something changes in the relationship between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Am Yisrael. Something changes. And what has changed? The change is the framework of Zkenim to the period of Nevi'im. We are talking about two different types of revelations. There's a revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the period of the Shoftim, 350 years. And then Shmuel realizes that there's a new revelation taking place. Which is what? Which is the revelation of Nevuah. Now, in order to understand this, what's the great difference between them? And the great difference between them is the following. All the enemies in Sefer Shoftim are what? Are physical. They attack this tribe, they attack that tribe, they go against each different area of Am Yisrael. That is Sefer Shoftim. And that's why all the Shoftim come from different Shvatim. They don't come from all one Shevet. Okay, Dvorah comes Barak ben Avinoam, and you've got Gidon from Menashe, etc., etc., etc. Yiftach also, Agiladi, all different areas. All of a sudden, in Sefer Shoftim, the first battle which takes place, what happens? In the whole of Sefer, in the story of Shimshon, the Plishtim don't deal with the Aron. What happens when the Plishtim attack in the period of Shmuel? The Aron Hashem is taken away. Something is changing, Shmuel notes.
No, well, it was the Bnei Israel who brought.
Right, and in the time of Sefer Shoftim,
They left the Aron.
they left the Aron there. Exactly, a new revelation. Something takes place, Shmuel notes. Okay, and therefore, and if you look in Sefer Shoftim, nothing is ever mentioned about going to the Mishkan. Nothing is ever mentioned in the whole of Sefer Shoftim going to the Mishkan in Shiloh. How does Sefer Shmuel begin? Chana, going to where? Shiloh. Something changes. And Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, based on this Mishnah, realizes that that's what Rashi telling us. It's not the editor. It's not Anshe Knesset Gdolah who write Vayehi, Vayehi, Vayehi. It is whom? Shmuel. Shmuel Hanovi is the one who's teaching us the different relationships which exist between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Klal Yisrael. That, he says, is the Chidush of Rashi. Vayehi, Vayehi, Vayehi. Each Vayehi is a different period in history. And that is the Chidush of Rashi. Let's go to another Rashi.
That's not what Rashi says. Rashi says it connects.
Why does it but what is it based on? How does Rashi use? Who does Rashi use as the source? Go back to Rashi. Line number 30. Yeah? Hakol lefi haseder. Who does he copy here? Moshe masar et haTorah liYoshua v'Yoshua zkenim. Where's this knowledge from? Pirkei Avos. Right? That's the basis of it. Now, we asked a question. Who wrote the first Pesukim by Yehi? Comes along Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky and say, don't think it is historical perspective of Anshe Knesset Gdolah. No. It's Shmuel Hanovi realizing that these become different periods. Why? Because I was there. My father, Elkanah, was there. And I was there as a young boy. And something changes. Right. Let's go one other Rashi. Because what Rashi wants to teach us is a sort of what you call in modern day Hebrew, English jana. What do we mean by this? Rashi pays attention to the flow of words. One word after the other. How does it fit in? And if you remember our first shir on Rashi, we spoke about his introduction to Shir HaShirim. What did he write in his introduction to Shir HaShirim? He says, Achat, in line number 60, Achat diber Elokim, shtaim zu shamati. Mikra echad, one pasuk, comes out into, manifests itself into different ways. V'sof davar, but at the end of the day, says Rashi, ein lecha mikra yotzei midei pshuto umashma'o. V'af al pi shedibru hanviim divreihem bedugma, even though you can understand the words of the Nevi'im as mashalim, as parables, etc., etc. Sarich liyashev et hadugma al ofaneha v'al sidra. What is the flow of the sentence? What is the flow of the words? Al ofaneha, ofanea in modern day Hebrew is what? Wheels. How do the wheels go? One after the other. You have a car or a bicycle, one wheel follows the other one. So how does the wheel of the pasuk go? How does the flow go? So what is Rashi worried about in the Nevi'im? How do the books flow one after the other? And that is what Rashi is trying to teach us. Read words in the correct order. Try to understand the flow of words. And here in the beginning of Sefer Yecheskel is the best example, guys. Okay? Says, let's look in line number 55, the beginning of Sefer Yecheskel. Vayhi b'shloshim shana barvi'i b'chodesh b'chamisha l'chodesh. The 30th year, on Barvi'i, on the 4th day of Barvi'i b'chamisha l'chodesh, the 5th month. That means we're talking about the 4th day of Tammuz of the 30th year. 30th year of what? Okay. V'ani b'toch hagolah. Al nahar kvar. Niftechu shamayim va'ereh marot Elokim. Okay? The first sentence of Sefer Yecheskel is 30th year, 4th day of Tammuz. Next week, guys. Next week, next Shabbos, is the first nevu'ah of Sefer Yecheskel. But the 30th year of what? Now, b'chamisha l'chodesh hi hashana chamishit legalut המלך יואכים. היה היה דבר יחזקאל אל יחזקאל בן בוזי הכהן בארץ כסדים על נבהר כבר ותהי עליו שם יד השם. ואראה והנה רוח שרה. Now please take note of the sentences. The first sentence speaks about me. The second and third sentences are the narrator. Okay? ב-15 לחודש, היא השנה החמישית, לגלות. היו היה דבר, we don't even know who אני is. Who is the אני? Who is the אני? Who tells us that? Yecheskel doesn't say who I am. The narrator tells us. Third person. היו היה דבר השם אל יחזקאל בן בוזי. The narrator comes and tells us who he's talking about. Now Rashi has a big problem here. The flow of the sentences. Surely the first sentence should have been Hayo haya davar Hashem el Yecheskel b'shana chamishit, etc., etc. Pasuk Gimel should have been, or Pasuk Gimel and Bet should have been the first Pasukim of Sefer Yecheskel. Who is the subject? Who are we talking about? When are we talking about? Etc., etc. No. For some reason, it didn't work like that. Rashi comes along and says, Satam Hanavi. The Navi, I don't know how to translate the word Satam. What? Was silent, kept quiet. He didn't give any details. Velo piresh shmo mihu. Velo piresh leminyan mamana. Lefichach Hifsika Ruach HaKodesh et Dvarav. The narrator stops. He says, Yecheskel, tell me who you are. Who's speaking? בשני מקראות הסמוכים, ללמד מי הנביא, וללמד למניין ממנה, ב5 לחודש, יהיה השנה החמישית. אין אלה דברי הנביא. The second and third psukim are not the words of the prophet. No, says Rashi. שהרי כבר נאמר, שב5 לחודש היה עומד, ועוד שמתחילה אמר נבואתו בלשון עצמו. He's speaking about himself. ואני בתוך הגולה, ואראה מראות אלוקים. וכן בסוף. ואלה שני מקראות מפסיקים דבריו, כאילו אחר מדבר עליו. Somebody else is talking about Yecheskel. That means we have the words of Yecheskel, and we have the words of the narrator, the editor. And Rashi points that out. But the question is, then why is it written like this? Why doesn't the editor change the order of the sentences? Pasuk Aleph should have really been Pasuk Gimel. V'ani b'toch hagola v'ereh. The answer is, guys, no. Yecheskel is giving us shock treatment. We are talking about 30 years, approximately, before the destruction of the first temple. In the time of Galut Melech Yehoiachin. Galut Melech Yehoiachin is about 20 years, before the destruction of the first temple. And here, Yecheskel realizes Galut is beginning. The Galut, the exile of Nebuchadnezzar and the Churban bias is beginning. I'm in the Golah. I'm in exile now. No, I'm not visiting. I'm stuck here. That is the introduction of Yecheskel. Shock treatment. ויהי ב30 שנה ברביעי. ואני בתוך הגולה. And what happens there? Even when I'm in Golah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu still speaks to me. Look at the sentence. ויהי ב30 שנה ברביעי, ב5 לחודש, ואני בתוך הגולה על נהר כבר, yet what? ואראה מראות אלוקים. And then the narrator says, wake up, Yecheskel. Wake up. What do you mean, wake up? Tell us who you are. That is the introduction to Yecheskel. The first Novi who speaks about Nevuot in Chutz La'aretz. That is how Rashi understands this pasuk.
So it's a well-known literal style that people talk about themselves in the third person. That does happen.
Correct. But here, Rashi doesn't want to say that, because Ruach HaKodesh mafsik. Right. Now let's go to another book. I'm just giving snippets to how Rashi perceives Nevi'im, how he looks at it. Let's go to another one. If there are any questions, please stop me. Okay? Now, Tehillim. Rashi begins off and says the following, the introduction. Ashrei Ha'ish, first perek of Sefer Tehillim. Ashrei Ha'ish asher lo alach ba'atzat resha'im, b'torat Hashem chefzo, etc., etc., etc. Rashi says in the first pasuk of Tehillim, Ba'asara leshonot shel zemer ne'emar sefer zeh. There are 10 words of expression of Tehillim, of praising Hashem. Nitzuach, Nigun, Mizmor, Shir, Halel, Tfilah, Bracha, Hoda'ah, Ba'ashrei, U'Bahallelujah. Why does Rashi need to say that? Because what's David HaMelech starting off with? No. These, say Rashi, are words of introduction. Ashrei is an opening up of a perek. Perek Aleph starts off that way, and Perek Kuf Yud Chet starts off. Perek Kuf Yud Chet is the very long one, which is divided 8 psukim on each letter. Okay? So Rashi says, David HaMelech, when he wrote Sefer Tehillim, he used different expressions. But besides that, Keneged, says Rashi, Asara b'nei Adam shamarua. Each one of these people express themselves in different ways. Adam, Melchizedek, Abraham, Moshe, David, Shlomo, Asaf, Shlosha b'nei Korach. So each one expresses himself in a different way. That's the introduction of Rashi. Rashi says, always look at the first words of a book. Always look at the first word and see what it means. Now, we're going to give another example of a perek which Rashi actually breaks down the explanations of Chazal. Line number 80. A very, very hard perek. Perek Samachet. Perek Samachet is Lamnatzeach LeDavid Mizmor Shir. Yakum Elokim Yafutzu Oivav Veyanusu Mesanav Mipanav. Okay, where's that copy from? Vayibin Soaron Vayomesh Akum Hashem Yafutzu Oivecha. So the language of David HaMelech here is, he copies it from the Torah. He uses language which is in the Torah, etc. Shiru Elokim Zamru Shmo, Solu L'Rochev Ba'aravot, B'Yashmo V'Ilzu Lefanav. Also an expression in the Torah. Rochev Arevot. Okay? In Parshat V'Zot HaBracha, you also have the terminology Rochev. What? Rochev Shamayim Me'al. Very good. So David HaMelech, when you learn Sefer Tehillim, find the sources, because the first commentary, we mentioned it before, on Torah is Sefer Tehillim. Carries on. Avi Yetomim, Dayan Almanot, Elokim Bim'od Kodsho. Now we're going to jump to Pasuk Tet. Eretz Rasha, Af Shamayim, Natfu. Where's that from? Shirat Dvorah. Mipnei Elokim ze Sinai, Mipnei Elokim Elokei Yisrael. Geshem nedavot tanif Elokim nachlatcha v'nil'a takonanta, chayatcha yashuvu bo tachin b'tovatcha le'ani Elokim. Lama teratzdu harim? Why should the mountains jump around? Gavnunim ha'ar, chamad Elokim l'shifto, af Hashem yishkon lenetzach. Now, Rashi brings the Midrash of Chazal on this. And Rashi says the following. V'rabotenu darshu Kol HaMizmor, the whole of Perek Samachet, ad Baruch Hashem Yom Yom al Matan Torah. This, according to Chazal, it is a description of the day of the giving of the Torah. V'geshem nedavot v'matan Torah v'chayatcha yashuvu ba. Let's go look in Rashi, Pasuk 90, in line number 95. Where do Chazal learn it from? Because they say in Pasuk Tet, in line number 85, Eretz Rasha Af Shamayim Natfu Mipei Elokim, Ze Sinai. It's talking about Har Sinai, and etc., etc. But says Rashi now, Ein libi mityafshev le'amen lashon yashuvu bo milashon nityashu b'Torah. It's not talking about only Har Sinai. It's talking about something else completely. And Rashi proves at the end of the day that Ein ze lashon hamikra. And Rashi goes through every pasuk and explains why you can't explain this perek on what? On Har Sinai. So Rashi goes against it. Why? Because it has to fit. There has to be a flow, etc., etc. And this is one of the classic examples where Rashi doesn't accept Chazal. He said it doesn't flow correctly. Now, we're going to go now from Sefer Tehillim to Sefer Iyov. Now, Iyov becomes...
Comment on Pasuk Aleph, what we just read in Samachet, it's interesting that he uses the term Lamanasech and Mizmor.
Exactly.
2 of the 10.
2 of the 10, correct. Okay, now we're going to do Iyov. Because Rashi works very hard on Sefer Iyov because of the words. But Rashi doesn't deal with content. What is the objective of Sefer Iyov? There's only one place where Rashi speaks about it, which is amazing. Let's start off. The one who dealt with Iyov in the most unbelievable way was the Ramban. Ramban wrote a Perush on Sefer Iyov, word for word, non-stop. In his introduction, he says the following: V'yesh davar mach'iv halevavot umad'iv hamachshavot. There are certain things which cause your heart to have pain, and mad'iv machshavot, and make your thoughts become sad. Mimenu levado, and from this alone, nimshachim rabim b'chol adorot likfira gvura. You become a koifer. You become a koifer. A certain aspect in our lives which can create kfira. V'hu heiraot ba'olam mishpat mu'ukal, where you don't see life being fair. In other words, Tzadik Veralo, Rasha B'Torah. That's the biggest problem of human beings. Tzadik Veralo, Rasha B'Torah. Ki omru, because people will say, Madua derech ploni uploni tzalcha. Why certain people have luck all their life? Velama ploni uploni sheiru tzadikim avadu. Says the Ramban, Ze shoresh hameri. This is the source of rebellion. Shoresh hameri. B'chol hamordim mikol uma v'lashon. Guys, this is the introduction of the Ramban on Sefer Iyov. And he carries on, and he says the following: V'hinei nachzor litzlunot Iyov b'tochachto. Now we're going to go into it in great detail. We're going to analyze each section. V'da ki me'asher inyan hazeh pina gdola b'Torah. This becomes one of the foundations of the whole of the Torah. Ureut ha'inyan b'tchilato mevucha rabba. And because everything is so complex, so mixed up, nityached lanu sefer echad kulo. Hu sefer Iyov. Iyov is going to deal with this primal problem of tzadik veralo v'rasha v'tovlo. That is the whole objective. Comes along the Ramban and says, Yesh me'aboteinu she'amru ki Moshe Rabbeinu ktavo. There's some people who say Moshe Rabbeinu wrote it. V'ne'emar lo mipi ha'gvura inyan ha'ish. This becomes a prophecy. Moshe Rabbeinu has a conversation with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells him, V'achaverim heima, kasher ne'emar lo mipi ha'gvura sefer Bereshis. Similar to Sefer Bereshis. Now what's so special about Sefer Bereshis, guys? What's so special about Sefer Bereshis is the first pasuk. It doesn't say Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe lemor, Daber b'nei Yisrael v'amat aleim Bereshis bara Elokim. Why not? Because Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't there. So therefore HaKadosh Baruch Hu couldn't tell Moshe Rabbeinu, and therefore it's written in a closed way, as if the narrator is telling the story. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling Moshe Rabbeinu the story. Like Sefer Bereshis, the same thing with the Iyov. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling to Moshe Rabbeinu the story of the Iyov and the conversations which take place. V'nitztava mipnei b'ktivato. And says the Ramban, Moshe Rabbeinu was commanded to write it. Guys, we're not talking about a modern day writer. We're talking about the greatest of the greatest commentaries on Tanach, on Torah, the Ramban. The most prolific, the founder of the development of Kabbalah, etc. And what does he say? He says, Eov is there because, according to one opinion in Chazal, which the Ramban takes in a literal way, he says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him. Because that will become the battle of humanity. You will either believe me or you won't believe in me. Why? Why won't you believe in me? Tzadik Goralo, Rasha B'Tovlo.
What is the basis for saying that Moshe wrote it?
It's a Gemara. It's a Gemara. We're not going to... the Ramban accepts it because of his way of looking at things. He understands that since this becomes the problem of humanity, HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to reveal the subject in a certain way. Okay, it's his own explanation, but he takes this statement of Chazal. ונצטווה מפני בכתיבתו, מפני היותו עניין שורש באמונה ביסוד התורה. ודע כי שם בספר ההוא יקשו כל העולה על הלב להקשותו בעניין הזה. All the possible questions which come up, come up. That is the Ramban on Eov. Right. And therefore, if you want to learn Eov properly, you learn it with the Ramban and the Malbim. They are the two greatest commentaries on Eov. But then there's Rashi. Rashi doesn't deal with content. He deals with words. And they're very, very hard words in Sefer Eov. Now, let's go to the last chapter of Sefer Eov. The last chapter of Sefer Eov is the following. ויהי אחר דיבר השם את הדברים האלה אל איוב. After HaKadosh Baruch Hu speaks to Eov. ויאמר השם אל אליפז התימני. חרה אפי בך ובשני רעיך. I'm angry with you. I'm angry with you and your two friends who were, says Rashi in Pasuk Zayin, line 121, Bildad Hashuchi v'Tzofar Hana'amati, your two friends, I'm angry with you. Ki lo dibartem elai nechona ka'avdi Eov. You didn't speak like Eov did. Now, here Rashi comes along and gives us an insight. Rashi says the following, Ki lo dibartem, שהרי לא דיברתם אליי טענה נכונה כעבדי איוב. שהרי הוא לא פשע בי. He never did anything wrong to me. כי אם על אשר אמר, the only thing I can catch him on, says Rashi, is תם ורשע ומכלה. Okay, sometimes, why don't you get rid of Rasha'im? Why do you attack me? Now, he comes along and says, ואם הוסיף לדבר, and if he did continue speaking, מפני קושי יסורים אשר כיבדו וריזקו עליו. He spoke against HaKadosh Baruch Hu because of the hardships. Because of the hardships. Because he was upset, he was angry. אבל אתם, you, פשעתם, על אשר הרשעתם אותו. You made him into a Rosha. You made Eov into a Rosha. You made him into a Koifer, says Rashi. הלא יראתך כסילתך והתחזקתם אותו בחזקת רשע. And you made him out as a Rosha. You didn't realize what Eov was going through. הייתם משותקים ולבסוף הייתם משותקים ומנוצחים לפניו. You should have, at the end of the day, you were beaten by him. The Knicks beat San Antonio, guys. He beat you. Why? והיה לכם, what should have you have done? What do friends do? Do friends attack? Do friends go against somebody? No. והיה לכם לנחמו. You should have comforted him. You should have shown empathy. כאשר עשה אליהו. ולא די לאיוב בצרתו וייסוריו. And it wasn't enough that Eov was suffering. כי הוספתם על חטאתכם פשע להקניתו. you added a new dimension to the pain of Eov. That's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Eov. Let's go now to the Gemara. Hahumer Rabbanan, line number 129. Hahumer Rabbanan kamed Rabbi Shoba Nachmani. The Yativ Ka'amani was saying, Eov lo haya velo nivra ela mashal haya. The story of Eov is a parable. And what is the parable? The parable is, says Rashi, mashal haya. Lelamed mimenu shuvot lamakatragim al midat adin. Number one is how to give answers to people who complain against HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'she'ein adam nitfas al tza'aro. Don't try to blame people when they are upset. So what is the whole book of Eov? The whole book of Eov doesn't speak about, and that's what Rashi says, carries on the Gemara and says, Eov lo bedat yidaber. Eov didn't speak logically. Udvarav lo baskel. Uchtiv ki lo dibartem alai nechona kavdi Eov. Amarava mikan she'ein adam nitfas b'shat tzaro. When you are sitting avelus, don't start asking questions. Why this and the other? Not the person himself, but the comforters. Job's comforters, famous phrase. There's an amazing work of Art Scroll on Eov. It is amazing. And the editor, his name was Ramosha Eisenman, who was the Mashgiach of Baltimore, he writes the following. When Rashi says that the purpose of the book is to help us learn appropriate answers, he may be referring not so much to the philosophical content of the answer which we give, but to the tone which we use, the attitude and empathy which we project. More than we learn to answer, we learn how to answer. And most importantly, how not to answer. This is Rashi on Eov. This is Rashi on Eov. Rashi doesn't go into philosophy. And we'll learn in a minute why Rashi doesn't go into philosophy. Rashi is not a philosopher. Rashi is a commentary looking at us as human beings. How to relate to one another as human beings. Rashi did not live in a philosophical atmosphere. He lived in the period of the Crusades. He lived in the Dark Ages. He didn't live with the Rambam in Egypt, where you had the Islamic philosophers. No, Rashi didn't live there. Where does Rashi live? Northern France. Okay? Last week was Chav Sivan, the day of the terrible blood libels against the Jews. Avarachamim 1096. Rashi saw all of the, First Crusades, etc. He didn't live in a philosophical world. He lived in a wild world where people didn't think philosophically. And therefore, Rashi didn't involve himself in philosophy like the Ramban does. He deals with the simple emes of Torah, tradition, generation after generation. And I'm going to end off by learning an amazing Rashi. Rashi says, "Va'avta et Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha." Now, we're going to jump to the Rambam first, in line number 155. And the Rambam says the following: "Va'mitzvah shlishit u'shetzivanu la'avo yit'aleh." To love HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And how do you love HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Nitbonen v'naskil b'mitzvotav u'p'orotav. Look at HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Look what He's given. עד שנשיגהו ונתענג בהשגתו תכלית התענוג. וזוהי ההבחנה אהבה מחויבת. Looking at the Rambam in line 160, ואיך הדרך לאהבתו ויראתו בשעה שהתבונן אדם במעשיו וברואיו הנפלאים הגדולים. והקדוש ברוך הוא, you look around in nature, and you look around the world and you see Venus next to Jupiter last night. Okay, you see the creation, you see the stars, you see the world. There's something great about Kadosh Baruch Hu. Right. Rashi, Rambam, philosopher. Rambam saying, be a scientist, be a philosopher, delve into the world. Let's do Rashi. What does Rashi say? Line number 147. Va'avta. Aseh dvarav me'ahava. Do mitzvahs because you love to do them. Don't think about it. Don't delve into worlds which don't exist. Do mitzvot because you love HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because you love, you're connected. Eino domeh oseh me'ahava lo'oseh mi'yirah. You can't compare a person who does mitzvahs because of love and mitzvahs of fear. Ha'oseh etzel rabbo mi'yirah. When you live in a world of fear, then when a teacher tells you something, you want to get away from it, guys. We all remember school. Yeah, we all remember school. Okay? How are you really supposed to teach? Through love. Because if a teacher teaches through love, then all his pupils will listen to him. It's exactly what he said in Iyov. When a teacher shows empathy, when a teacher shows kindness, when a teacher loves his pupils, shows love, the pupils will do anything. The minute you know you're going to be put in the corner with a dunce's cap, you know you don't stand a chance. Yeah, we all know that, guys. Don't know about the Americans, but the English definitely. Okay? But that is what Rashi is teaching us. And where does Rashi get this from? David HaMelech. David HaMelech says in Divrei Hayomim, Va'ata Shlomo b'ni. Now, Shlomo, my son, Da et Elokei Avicha. Be connected to Elokei Avicha. Va'avdeu b'lev shalem. Uvenefesh chavitza. Do it because you desire. Ki kol levavot doresh Hashem. V'chol yetze machshavot mevin im tidrushenu yimatzelach. V'im ta'azvenu yaznicha la'ad. This is the source of Rashi. What David HaMelech says to Shlomo, remember, do things because of love, you will always remain connected. If you don't, then you'll run away. This is Rashi's perception of Torah. And his whole flow speaks about how we understand what Kadosh Baruch Hu wants from a person. And I think just when you learn of Haftarah, just open Rashi. Just open Rashi sometimes. It's worthwhile. And you see the gems which come out of Rashi on the Torah and Rashi on Nevi'im. Mitzvah Hashem, next year we'll begin Rashi on Gemara.